reference point. So I'm talking about Dante. A lot of times, there are a lot of Dante is often read, you know, sort of like kids in school, they read the Inferno, things like that. But I'd like to kind of reclaim Dante a little bit. The first thing I want to say is that for me, when I think of a definition of love, the one that I use is the confluence of longing and belonging. It is the place where we feel at once home. At the same time, we are constantly pushing forward, moving towards the edge. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is kind of like this edge. And I've had this experience in my own life of confronting the edge in several different ways. I've had the experience of seeing my daughter, before she was born, sort of pushing out at her mother's belly. I saw images drawn in early cave art where people had handprints inside caves. And now as my daughter's growing a little bit older, I'm seeing how for her, the most important thing, and for any child as they're growing up, is to have the opportunity to explore their world. To, instead of be pacified, to really have the opportunity to push at that edge. And it's that edge where we feel the most alive, where we feel this intensity of life. So I'm going to talk about how Dante confronts that edge. And for Dante, Dante was living in a time when he was sort of pushed to the edge. He became embroiled in political conflicts of his time and was exiled from his home in Florence. So and felt betrayed by not only by the politicians of Florence, but also by the Vatican. And you can see, for example, in the Inferno, you can see a lot of the evidence of the people who he felt betrayed him, because those people end up in various circles of hell in his version, right? But that's only a part of the story for him, right? Because Dante is a holistic vision. It's a vision of the entire universe. This is the bottom here. This is his journey to hell. And he also has a journey to purgatory and a journey into Paradiso, or to heaven. And I'm primarily going to focus on Paradiso for reasons that will become clear. And I'd also like to add that Dante, as a poet, is someone who is using the language that allows us, or to allow the people in his day, to embody and understand a cosmology. Largely, we know a cosmology not through information, but through mythic language, through poetic language. And that's what Dante is doing. So he begins his story. So I'm going to read a couple excerpts as I go, and I'll read them in the original first, just to get a feel for it, because I think it's important to really feel the language and feel it as he wrote it, as he would have said it. So he begins by saying, Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura che diritta via era smarrita. In the middle of my life's journey, I returned to a dark wood where the straight way was lost. That's how he begins his journey. And what he does from there is he goes on a journey of depth into the interior, into hell, which is his personal journey of interiority. And it's only through that journey of personal interiority that he's able to make a return to the heavens. And for him, when he ultimately reaches the edge, he's led, I should add that he's led from, well, he's led by the poet Virgil when he's in the underworld, when he's in the Inferno. He's led into paradise by Beatrice, who is the love of his life. It was a real woman that he knew and was in love with. And she is the embodiment of divine love, and that is how he's led into the heavens. He ultimately crosses the cosmic sphere up here in the prima mobile, which is the edge of the cosmos. And something interesting happens there in this cosmology. What happens is, as he's moving further and further away, expanding out further and further. When he reaches the edge, something strange happens, and you can sort of see it in this image. It's not entirely clear, but what happens after he reaches the edge is he then has an experience not of being sort of dispersed, but actually of union. What he says when he reaches the edge is that he sees the entire essence of the cosmos as a single integrated whole. What he says is this: "Nel suo profondo vidi che si interna legato con amore in un volume, ciò che per l'universo si squaderna. Within its depths I saw and gathered, written in love, in one volume, the scattered leaves of all the universe." So when he reaches the edge, he sees the entire universe. He's using the metaphor of a poem. He sees the entire universe as a single poem now, and that's what he was doing with his work. He refers to it also as un semplice lume, one simple flame, or and the common term he uses is un punto, a point. So this is singularity. It's a singularity not unlike the singularity we have when we talk about our contemporary cosmology, when we talk about the Big Bang. Coming from this single point, everything emanates. And for Dante, it is a point of divine love, divine consciousness, and from that point, the entire universe moves. The final line of the whole commedia is this: "All'altra fantasia qui manco possa, mangia volgeva il mio desiro e il vele, si come rotta che ugualmente è mossa l'amor che muove il sole e l'altra stelle." Here, the power of high fantasy was lost. But already my desire and will were rolled like a wheel that moves equally, the love that moves the sun and other stars. So Dante realizes the end of his journey is when his will and the divine will are united in as a single whole, and it is that will that through love moves the universe. So Dante's is very much a cosmology of love. And it's a love that he understands when he reaches this edge, right? He goes to the very edge. He goes to the depths, for one, and then he reaches the edge, where he has a different kind of interiority. It's an interiority that is cosmic, that is an interiority not of isolation, but of interconnection when he reaches that edge. And so, looking at this kind of cosmology, which is the medieval image of the universe, what then would be the edge in a cosmology as we have today? And this is what Teilhard was really confronting. He was confronting the fact that we have an entirely different way of thinking about the world, particularly because we have one in which time and space are connected. Dante wasn't doing that. For Dante, this was a spatial map, but time wasn't really a part of this map. So where then is the edge in the cosmology in which time and space are interconnected? Anyone?
Everywhere.
Everywhere is an answer. Go ahead.
I can give the answer you wrote in the paper.
What did I say?
Time. At the edge of time. Cutting edge of evolution.
So that would be this moment right now is the edge. Because at every single place in the universe, we're at the edge of the universe bringing forth something new. So it is everywhere. But the temporal element is what makes it different from Dante's vision, because this moment is the edge.
Every when.
Every when. So it's not unlike actually when Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven is among us right now. This realized eschatology that Jesus had. This notion that at this moment, everywhere and for everyone, we are at the edge. So where then is the center? Any ideas about the center?
Everywhere.
Right there.
There are a lot of ways to look at it. One, the way I look at it is this: the center for our cosmology is reached the same way that Dante reaches his center. It's that as we look out, if someone like Brian has a big fancy telescope and looks out as far as he can go, and actually we don't have a telescope and go quite this far to reach Il Punto, but if we could, we would see not sort of this dispersal into emptiness. What we would see, because we're going back in time, is we would see ourselves. We would see the moment of creation. We would see singularity. So by going to the edge, by going further out, we actually come to this point of interconnection, just like Dante did. So there's a way in which, by crossing this sort of cosmic barrier, by reaching the edge of the cosmos, that we can encounter our interconnection. And I think that's particularly important to think about on a different level in terms of this moment in human history, because I would suggest that right now we are very much confronting an edge of a different sort. We're confronting a moment at which the old ways of thinking about things are coming to pass, and that there are and new ways of thinking about them, of relating to the world, are required. And that's another sort of edge, because the way we understand our world is understood through a cosmology. The way we understand our world and our relationship to one another is conveyed by someone like Dante in, say, a medieval setting. And this sort of mythic understanding of our place in the universe in the modern context requires an entirely new way of thinking about things. And to cross from one paradigm to the next, what I would call a cosmology of competition, which is what we have now, the paradigm of individualistic capitalism, to move to a cosmology of love requires something not unlike actually severing this cosmic sphere. Because in a psychic way, to change one's way of relating to the universe requires something as intense as that. I think that this idea that each of us wants to find the edge is a really important thing. I was talking to my cousin yesterday, and she's considering what to do with her life, and her parents have a lot of she's actually considering coming to school here. That's one of the things she's considering. And her parents have a lot of ideas about that. And they're all very practical, sensible ideas, I guess. But one thing I said to her, which I'm fairly sure her parents didn't say, is, what makes you feel alive? And being at the edge, I mean, this is why we have, this is why a child reaching adolescence does things that are sort of dangerous sometimes, right? Because to be at the edge makes us feel alive. And we require a certain amount of safety and guidance from our elders in that process. But we also really yearn to confront that edge. That's where we're alive. That's where we're human. If we think about the first people, what made us human? One way of looking at that is, what made us human was we were apes who were willing to take a chance and walk out onto the savannah. Everything is turned upside down when we reach the edge. For Dante, it was. And in the context of a cosmology of competition, when we reach that edge, we're confronted with a cosmology of love. So I just wanted to, actually share something that I wrote, a short poem, which wasn't for this, but I think it's relevant. And then if there's time, we can have discussion, because I like dialogue, if people are interested. This is called At the Edge. In the Red Sea, the most barren of landscapes meets a universe of color. The ragged, rugged peaks of the Sinai meet the depths of the Red Sea reefs, where a man, approaches the edge and moves from the ease of 2-foot-deep wading to the depths of the abyss. He pauses for a moment, fearful of the depths, until he sees that the beauty of the reefs lies beyond the edge, and the sea supports him just the same in the depths as in the shallows. I stand here, poised at the precipice of tomorrow, the ape peering out of the forest, the polar bear poised to dive into the sea, even as his icy home melts, the infant entering the birth canal, the mother awaiting motherhood. To be alive is to live at the edge. To be at the edge is to give birth to each moment in this pregnant world, standing at the high cliffs above the churning, dancing, salty sea, giving birth, each moment, pregnant with tomorrow at the edge of unknowing. I think that the tragedy when we're afraid to go to the edge, and there's sensible reasons for this. Most children today, compared to even when I was growing up, which wasn't that long ago, most children today spend very little time outside, free, to do what they want. And there's a sort of rational fear, you could say, of the wild. The wild's dangerous. But the tragedy is not so much, well, the tragedy is, in part, that we've paved over much of the world in our fear of the wild. But an even deeper tragedy, maybe, is that we've paved over the wild in ourselves in the process. So I think I have a couple minutes if anyone has any questions or...
Actually, we have 7 minutes.
Okay. Yes?
What is the image at the very top?
Yeah, it's not entirely clear, is it? So if you look at the crystalline sphere, which actually, so you have, essentially I can sort of really quickly go over it, you have the 7 planets, right, which includes the sun and the moon, and then you have the fixed stars above that. The 9th sphere was added by Arab astronomers at some point, I believe, and then beyond that is what's referred to as the Empyrean. And what happens for Dante in his journey is that once he reaches beyond this sphere where it's expanding outward, there's then a journey that goes within. So these are concentric spheres again. So there's concentric spheres going out, and then once he gets beyond those spheres, there are concentric spheres going within until he reaches at the very center, the punto, which is the divine consciousness of love, from which everything else emanates.
Which is part of the interior, I guess.
It's, yes. Well, it's a map of the cosmos, but it's a map of the soul too, right? So I think of it as a sort of cosmic interiority, right? There are a lot of different ways to think about it, I think. But and he sort of talks through it in a kind of almost very sort of straightforward way, like, okay, now you get beyond this, and you're going, and he doesn't. Say anything other than that's then you're going within. But what's interesting to me is that when he does cross that barrier, everything is inverted, and there's a process then of interiority again. So it's not that when he reaches beyond that he's alone. It's that he comes into deeper relationship with everything, and that's the process there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes.
What do you personally think it would take for our society to transition to a divine consciousness of love from where we are today?
Yeah. That's we have 4 minutes left for that? Yeah. Okay. Well, I would suggest that, and I can't even begin to answer that question justice, but one thing I can say is that the way it happens is not through, is not because, the problem we have is it's not that we don't have enough information, right? We're saturated with information. Information is good, but I think that, and it's not that we don't have enough ideas, I think that it would start with a way of being in the world, a sensitivity to the world, in which we experience, and that's why going to that edge is important, whatever that means for you, because it's not so much about finding things out, finding information out, but it's about how it is that we connect emotionally to the world around us. And then what I love about Dante is that he presents this cosmology, whatever it's not, I don't think the answer is to go back and follow Dante's way. It may be appropriate for his time, but I don't think it's appropriate for our time, so maybe we need Dante. We need to inspire one another to create myths, to sing songs, to make poetry that can make our world, to help our world come alive. So that's a start. But I don't think it's one person, though. I think it sort of comes together as a tapestry, right? I don't know that one person can come up with a single story that works. I think it has to be a shared experience. Yes?
Okay, so if we go to we're already at the edge. I agree with that. I think we're all in a very liminal space. We try to really define it and say we're here, we're that, but I think it's really all liminal all the time, you know, because it's this moment and that's the next moment, and yeah. But so if we go to the edge and then we encounter, like, the cosmology of competition encounters the cosmology of love, and then that's like an encountering of where the whole creation and the world soul emanates, but it's also reciprocally an interior journey to the human soul. But also, wouldn't there, because usually when two different things meet, a third thing arises. So out of those, even though it's where ours began, it's sort of paradoxical, even though that might be the singularity from which all this emanated, wouldn't a third thing arise? I mean, and if it's beyond time, if it's the edge, like beyond time as we know it, could that be maybe like another cosmology? I mean, like from a parallel universe or dimension or some other universe or something? I'm just wondering.
Yes. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's.
I want to go there.
I mean, you said a lot of different things, but I think they all make sense, right? I mean, there's sort of two ways to answer it, right? So there's Dante, who's saying a particular thing about in his particular time, right? I think that what is happening, or what does happen when one confronts that edge, is that whatever was going on before is transformed in some way, right? Something new is birthed. And that's where, for Dante, he goes from this sort of, it's this experience, and that's what's happening in the Empyrean, is it's going in increased sort of expansion and away from the center. But then once he gets over that edge, he returns to the singularity. And the singularity, just like when the universe is born, the singularity is what allows for something new to be birthed. One way of thinking about it is, if each of us today is at this edge, and each of us is a sort of singularity in that way, then each of us has the capacity to give birth to a new universe.
Yeah, like sort of nodes of knowing and perception or consciousness or being, like on some malleable kind of landscape, universal landscape. But I just think, I mean, I totally agree with this. But I think we always think just in terms of us, because that's where we come from. You know, that's where our perception, everything, our senses,
right.
Our thoughts. But I always try to put myself like outside, you know, other than us. You know, like other universes, other creatures and beings that have their own cosmologies, you know, especially the parallel universe stuff. But I think it's the connection that is somewhere in the matter, in the elements. It's hidden in the elements and in night and in day. And I'm a poet, that's what I was told. In poetry, so I just wondered. I just had to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Theodore. Time.
Thank you.
We're going to have a 15-minute break. We'd like to start precisely at 11:20 with